Hello, everybody, and thanks for being here. Welcome back to those who are already here, and welcome to those who are just here for the first time. And thank you all for being here for this talk. Thank you for coming to Yidstock. It's been 3 years. It's so good to be live again. Now, the gentleman I'm about to introduce to you really needs no introduction, but he deserves an introduction. So let me tell you about Hankus Netsky, a multi-instrumentalist, composer, and ethnomusicologist. Hankus Netsky is co-chair of New England Conservatory's Contemporary Improvisation Department and founder and director of the Klezmer Conservatory Band. He has composed extensively for film, theater, and television, collaborated closely with such artists as Yitzhak Perlman, Robin Williams, Joel Grey, Theodore Bickel, and Robert Brustein, and produced numerous recordings, including 10 by the Klezmer Conservatory Band. He received the Yossel Malotek Award and a Forward 50 Award for his role in the resurgence of traditional Eastern European Jewish ethnic musical culture. Hankus has also been instrumental in Yidstock from the very beginning. He's been here pretty much every year, and in the Yiddish Book Center's life too. From the very beginning, Hankus has worked in very many different capacities at the Yiddish Book Center, and he really, my book is titled The Essential Klezmer, and if there is one person who kind of embodies that title, it's Hankus Netsky. He is the essential klezmer. Without him, we would not be here, and we would not know the music the way we do. So would you please give a warm Yidstock welcome to Hankus Netsky.
So, I'm going to be doing 2 lectures this year for Yidstock, and the first one is on Hasidic music. One of the reason we picked these 2 topics for me this year is that Yanki Lemmer is here. And so Yanki Lemmer is both Hasidic and a cantor. And so Seth thought it might be a good idea to contextualize both of those important aspects of Jewish music, and to really kind of give you a bit of a perspective on what you might hear from Yanki. In addition to, I did hear them rehearsing, and he's also going to be singing Yiddish folk songs. So there's quite a bit to what the group is going to do tonight. I look forward to it myself. But this first talk is on Hasidic music, really the first 250 years of Hasidic music, and we're trying to do that in less than an hour. I actually taught Hasidic music last week for what they call Smicha Week for Aleph, and I had 3 hours a day for 5 lectures. So I'm going to really condense this. But the idea here is to just get a perspective on what Hasidim are doing with their music, what it means, how it fits into Jewish music historically. And the Hasidic movement ostensibly can really trace itself back to a long time ago, really, the 2nd or 3rd century, when Shimon Bar Yochai was starting to basically preach in a mystical way and talk about mysticism. But really, not until the Middle Ages in Palestine, that's really where this happened. Initially, Isaac Luria comes along and starts writing down the things that had come down as oral history in a book called the Zohar. Then we have a gap of about 250 years, but there is this idea of the mystical rabbi starting really in the 1500s, and by the time we get to the 1700s, rabbis who have this capacity, who really kind of see themselves as spiritual, mystical leaders, call themselves Baal Shem. So you kind of know when the rabbi is a mystical rabbi by the fact that they use the term Baal Shem. And then it just so happens that in the area near Belts, actually, Moldova, Ukraine, a rabbi comes along named who called himself the Baal Shem Tov, and that happens in the 1750s. So what we have is this transplanting of this mystical tradition that came from the Middle East, really, in Eastern Europe. And people are very interested in it in Eastern Europe at that time. And the reason that they're so interested in this mystical kind of populist movement is that Jews in Eastern Europe had become kind of disenchanted with the way the religion was going at that time. Does this sound familiar? I don't know. And they felt that they were cut off, that rabbis in places like Vilnius were making lots of edicts and basically kind of calling all the shots about what really was Jewish practice, who was qualified. And local Jews who felt like they were Jews too, felt neglected. And they felt like they kind of wanted to take matters into their own hands. So what happened was Rebbes, these Hasidic Rebbes, these mystical leaders, really gave them a chance to make their Judaism very local. So they had their leader. It was like all Judaism is local Judaism at that time. And by the beginning of the 1900s, there were at least 3 million Hasidim in Eastern Europe. One of the things we have to take into consideration about Hasidism is that some of us, for example, whose grandparents, great-grandparents came over from Eastern Europe, don't even know if we're from Hasidic background. I didn't know until about 25 years ago when my relatives born in this town that my family was from in Ukraine came over, and then I found out they were all Hasidic and had been raised that way. And so a lot of people kind of left that behind in the old country and came to America and really kind of left it. So it's actually a very interesting thing because I would bet if probably half the Jewish folks in this room probably have some Hasidic background, whether you know it or not. So it's actually very interesting. It was such a populist movement that, again, you wouldn't know. I mean, if Uncle Beryl came here and started a garment, something in the garment industry, he probably wasn't doing anything Hasidic here. It was something the family did in the old country more. But again, there also were Hasidim who came over who, since the immigrant period, have maintained that kind of tradition in their families. The bulk of the Hasidic community in the United States really is a post-war phenomenon. It really is something after World War II. There really was a tremendous movement to reclaim this traditional kind of Jewish lifestyle, especially in 3 areas of Brooklyn, which are Williamsburg, Crown Heights, and Borough Park. And we'll also include Flatbush and maybe the border of Midwood, because that's where the Mudgetzers live, in Flatbush. So, I mean, it's something that it's pretty specific, and that's kind of where I want to go with this right away. So we're really, this is really a lecture on music, and we're going to listen to quite a bit of music and discuss it, and then I'll leave room for questions at the end. But I'm really delighted to get to talk about Hasidic music. It's one of my very, very favorite subjects. So the first song I want to play you, I'm going to play you something called Nigun Geulim, which is, I want to start with this because it's a melody that might be familiar to people here. It's, if you've ever sung the Friday night piyut, Yidit Nefesh, usually right after that you sing Nigun Geulim. And the interesting thing about this is that it's gotten into the mainstream. It is very traditional, but American Judaism has kind of changed it. And so what's very interesting is to kind of hear how Hasidim actually do this niggin. And you'll see there are going to be some differences even if you know it. One thing that's very important is that niggunim usually have at least 3 sections. And the form is usually A, B, C, B. And in the course of the niggin, the melody unfolding, you're transformed. Now, Hasidic music, the first point I want to make about Hasidic music is not intended then for performance. Hasidic music is introspective. The person who's chanting is the one who is transformed. Now, the listener might also be transformed. It does happen. But really, it's something that is transcendental. The idea is that it's supposed to take you somewhere. So I'm going to start with this beautiful niggin, and as you'll see, this niggin is going to come back later on. And just to introduce this niggin, it's interesting. There's a Hasidic superstar named Avram Fried, a very, very popular singer. And I went to interview him for the Book Center. One thing I've done for the Book Center is oral history projects, and I've gone to Borough Park and to Flatbush and these various Crown Heights to interview various Hasidim. And when I interviewed Avram Fried, it was interesting. His wife actually came down and said, everybody knows about him, but my family is really the one that really had the influence in Hasidic music. My great-grandfather composed Nigun Gilman. And I thought it was very interesting, that his wife really felt so proud of that. That was very important. So let's listen to this. And I just want you to kind of see, this is Hasidic music as a family might sing it. Now, one other thing about this that I think is great, people are always asking me, is it okay to harmonize? And the answer is, they harmonize, so you can harmonize. Here we go. Okay, so was that a little different than the way you knew it? Yes, definitely. And so these are handed down orally in families. This is the Fried family, chanting this niggin that they are very close to, that they care about a lot because it comes from their family. And however, it has gone to all over the country and all over the world. Now, the other thing to say about this recording, you might be a little surprised that it's all acoustic. And one of the things, in other words, there's not like synthesizers and things like that if you associate that with modern Hasidic music. There is a time between Passover and Shavuos when instrumental music is not permitted, and that is a 40-day period. Therefore, a lot of these families make wonderful acoustic recordings to be played during that time with no instruments. So that's why it sounds like the way it sounds. But I want to look at this from the point of view a little bit of how are they singing. So there is very specific performance practice in Hasidic music. So you notice, for example, these Chabad Hasidim are singing, right? They're singing, ya ya hina ya ya hina ya ya hina ya 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 hina ya ya hina ya na ya. Okay, you're going to hear a lot of yais and nuz and muz in Hasidic music. And it's very, very specific, so you can learn a lot listening to it. You can kind of hear, you couldn't really write this down. I think that's really the point. It is, there's a lot of what we call krechs and dredlach. So krechs is something we would define as a groan or a sob. And in a lot of music, you know, they have ornaments, and they call them things like an échappé, an escape note, you know, something like that. Jewish descriptions of singing are going to be much more graphic. If you're going to go, oh, yoy, 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 oh, yoy, 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 that thing is not just an escape note. It has some pain to it. It actually is a feeling. It's an emotion. And Jewish ornaments have emotions. The Chabad Hasidim broke away fairly early on from the original Hasidim. So we're going to kind of look at that now. And from the legacy of the Baal Shem Tov, we have dance nigunim. And the Baal Shem Tov, who is seen as the founder of Hasidism, he believed very strongly that people did not need to study the whole Talmud in order to pray, in order for their prayers to be heard. That the highest form of prayer was singing and dancing, that you could express yourself that way. So we're going to go right now to an older nigun, to an older melody, and this is a melody that we still know from the Maggid of Mezrich. So the Maggid of Mezrich was, okay, so you might know the legacy of the Baal Shem Tov, Nachman of Breslov was grandson, and this Maggid of Mezrich was a disciple of Nachman of Breslov. So we have all kinds of things being passed around that are seen to go back to the time of the Baal Shem Tov and the Spirit. And one of the most famous of these is this nigun of the Maggid of Mezrich. So let's listen to this, and then we'll talk about this a little bit. So here we go. Now, I want to point out something very important now. This is another aspect of pretty much all Eastern European Jewish music. And you'll hear that these are slightly different syllables. They're not as careful as the Chabad Hasidim. But one thing you always hear is a gesture that very much goes with Hasidic music, and it's this. Now, I've spoken with you about this gesture before. Some of you have heard me do that. I cannot underestimate the power of this thumb going up in this direction. It could also be your second finger, but it is this idea. This is true in Talmudic study, you know. This is true if you're saying, are you kidding? 50 shekels, I'll only pay 30 shekels. 30 shekels. If you're in a shuk and you're bargaining, and it's true in Jewish dancing that you see people, you know, they're going to be doing that. And this, then, is something that if you have gone through your entire life and nobody ever pointed out this gesture, you can be very proud of yourself for having used it all the time when you're trying to make a point, right? No. Okay, but this is very important because the music itself has this gesture embedded in it. So listen to that. You'll hear that. And this is what we call a rikud. This is a dance niggin. That's what kind of niggin this is, what kind of melody this is. So it doesn't really work to go la da 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 la da 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 la la la. No, that's not the music. The music has to have that. But guess what you can't do? You can't write that. You have to know that the music goes that way. So Hasidic dance nigunim always have that kind of gesture to them, and they have, we call it, as in the klezmer world, the drummers call it the lift. The music has to have a lift. And then, no matter how crotchety the crowd is and how angry they are or they don't want to do anything, they will dance. As soon as you give them that lift, they will have no choice. And they will get up and they'll do that dance. So it's very important. So we don't know, of course, whether Hasidim, brought this to Jewish music. Probably not. It's probably something that's pretty universal, but it's very important as a part of Hasidic music. Now, another kind of niggin that's very, very important in Hasidic music is what we call the dveikus niggin. And that is one where you're going for communion with God. And it's pretty complicated. I mean, I'm going to play a brief dveikus niggin, and then I'm going to kind of look at the most famous of all of the Chabad dveikus nigunim. Now, in saying that, I want to point out that what Shner Zalman of Liad, and then later Lubavitch in Belarus and then Russia, what he was doing differently was he said that study was important for Hasidim. And he felt that you could use these nigunim to kind of bring you to a state where you were prepared for study, where you prepared for deep immersion in Jewish study or Jewish worship. So he came up with nigunim which were very, very devotional. And what he did, and then the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, who had no children, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, he found a guy in the Hasidic movement named Shlomo Zalmanov, and he asked him to record the Chabad nigunim the way that they needed to sound. So I'm going to play you this, and you'll hear how much this krachs and these dreidlach. Dreidlach are the trills that, that they fall. Again, very descriptive. Jews are very descriptive for some reason. So let's listen to this yearning niggin, and then we're going to go to a niggin supposedly handed down by the original Chabad rabbi, the Alter Rebbe's niggin. But let's listen to this yearning tune for a minute.
Yamama
Now, Zalmanov, as you can hear, is singing very complicated syllables. And in Chabad, it's very important to remember those syllables. The Rebbe felt that was very important, so he had this guy record his nigunim. He felt that not only did he have him record nigunim which were passed down for hundreds of years, but he had him record the ones that he recorded. The Rebbe himself, for example, was a composer, the last Chabad Rebbe. You might be in a congregation, even in a Reconstructionist congregation, I've heard this song, Rachamana de ane lo ane oh yamenu. God who has mercy on the poor, have mercy on us. This was composed by the last Lubavitcher Rebbe. But it has gotten around to many congregations and to many denominations. So if you listen to this, you'll hear just how complex it is. Just this little bit. When I work with musicians, we work on this for an hour. Just one line. I'm not going to do that. I just want you to hear just how complex. Just in that little phrase. You know, I mean, there's a lot to do there. There's the syllables, which are very specific, and these syllables are important to bring you in to what they call Dveikus, which means cleaving to God, communion with God. So this is part of it. Now, in Chabad, it gets even deeper. So the most famous Chabad nigun of all is called Dem Alter Rebbe's Nigun. How many of you have ever been to a Chabad wedding, a Lubavitch wedding? Right, okay. So you might have noticed that the processional is very slow. I mean, maybe not the ones you went to, but certainly at 770 Eastern Parkway. And people are walking down the aisle. How many have seen this? People walking down the aisle singing a very, very slow melody, holding candles. And that's the way it's done. And the whole congregation sings this beautiful tune from the original Chabad Rebbe. So this brings us to the subject of compositions, Hasidic compositions. Now, Hasidic composition is a type of music. And it's a type of music that's very influenced by Western European music of the 1700s, interestingly enough. So you'll notice similarities sometimes to Schubert, similarities sometimes to Mendelssohn. And yet, these are devotional tunes. And the interesting thing is that when Hasidim talk about these tunes, they talk about them not as, it starts on the dominant, it starts on the 5 chord, and then it moves to the tonic. No. They talk about the stages in the nigun. So the stages that the soul takes in chanting. So, for example, in the Alter Rebbe's nigun, we're on the earth at the beginning. You're not transformed yet. You can't, Hasidim would say, you can't just just jump into some other state. You have to get yourself there. So it'll start with the outpouring of the soul. Histaphus hanefesh, the outpouring of the soul. There will be a spiritual awakening. Hisurarus, you will become possessed by your thought to reach Dveikus, to reach communion with God. Hispa'alus and Dveikus. And then in the 4th stage, you reach a state of flaming ecstasy, and you become a disembodied spirit. Okay, how's that for music theory? But that is the nature of how Hasidim have looked, especially Chabad Hasidim, have spoken about their nigunim to ethnomusicologists. We don't know if the Rebbe thought this at all. We just know that that's how this journey of the soul is really part of the whole idea of what happens in tune. So I'm going to attempt this nigun, And if I become a disembodied spirit and disappear, then just, maybe ask one of the docents if they can find me somewhere else in the building. But this is a beautiful, beautiful tune. And literally, when it's narrated by the chassid who had this story about the stages of the nigun, he lists exactly what measure the transformations happen. So here's how it goes. I am now outpouring my soul. And I'm on the earth. Now I'm ready for a spiritual awakening. My spirit has woken up, and now I'm ready to be possessed by my thought and to commune with God. Now the music becomes flaming ecstasy, and the person singing becomes a disembodied spirit. We'll see what happens. All right, I'm still here. But the point is that in the course of singing the nigun, this journey is what's supposed to happen. And this is a very, very important thing in Hasidic music, that the journey happens while you're actually singing. And that at the end of the nigun, you're completely different than you are at the beginning. Now, I want to say that different Hasidic sects have their own sound and their own way that they're identified. So, I've been talking about Chabad Hasidim. I've been talking about descendants of the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid of Mezrich. I'm going to go now to a very contrasting kind of Hasidic music, the music of the Ger Hasidim. So the Ger Hasidim are in the suburbs of Warsaw. They're close by there. And their music is going to sound much more Polish and also much more party-like. It's going to be very different from what we've been hearing. The great Ger composer of the 20th century was a guy named Yankel Talmud, and he was the leader of the Ger choir in Europe, a fantastic musician, composed a lot of nigunim. And then a fellow named David Verdiger, a cantor, also from the Ger Hasidim, put words to the nigunim that Yankel Talmud composed. Now, I want to say that Yankel Talmud composed these tunes without words, and then when I interviewed David Verdiger when he was 94 for the Book Center, one of the things he complained about was he never got credit for his words. Now, that's because the words of Hasidic songs are all in the Torah, pretty much. So it's very hard for a lyricist to make a case that he wrote stuff. But still he was fetching about it. I thought that was really cool. So here we go. So we're gonna listen to typical Ger style tune, and again, it's gonna feel very different. It's an Asher Bara. This would be played at every Ger wedding, and you'll see the spirit is 100% different. You know the words, Asher bara sason v'simcha, right? The one who created joy and happiness, created bridegrooms and brides. I mean, you can't claim to have written that either. Od Yeshama, Hare Yehuda, Uvachutzos, Yerushalayim. There is dancing in the streets of Jerusalem, the joy of the bridegroom and bride. Poor David Vertiger, you know. Now, this is an interesting thing because in Hasidic music, nigunim do not have names, and they don't even have lyrics that go with them. But the whole trick in traditional Jewish singing is you could put any text to a nigun. So you just want to kind of be very clever about it, right? And find a text that goes with it. But it doesn't mean that the nigun suddenly has a name. It means that when you sing that text, then that text goes with it. But the melody by itself is just a melody. I mean, that Gila Arena, that is what we call a hook, right? I mean, you know, you're going to remember that. It's a great melody. And so the Ger melodies are very, very catchy. We'll visit with a few other kinds of Hasidim now to get an idea of what some of the characteristics of their music are. And the ones who brag the most really about the compositions tend to be the Mudjitz Hasidim, who are also from the town of Demblin, which is also near Warsaw, and also the Mudjitz Hasidim, who are from the Mudjitz Hasidim from Demblin, and the Bobov Hasidim, who are from Galicia, kind of between Krakow and Ukraine, and their nigunim can become very, very complicated. I was interviewing Ben-Zion Miller, who is the great cantor of those Hasidim, and he mentioned, you know, that there's nothing like Bobov Hasidim, that the compositions are so interesting and really kind of go places that no one else's music goes to. Here's an example. This is a Piskuli from Hershele Bakon. I just want to hear how complicated these nigunim can get. Here we go. So this is Bobov, Now, Bobov also, by the way, famous for Kol Horina Yeshua Uvalech Tzadikim, right? So, I mean, you know, folk songs, and also the famous Bubba for Wedding March. Yai da dai 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 ya bye 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 yai ba 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 bye ba ba bye. But here's a complicated Bubba of Niggin, just so you want to get an idea of like how complicated we're talking about. Here we go. Okay, that's a niggin. I mean, you know, this, if you go deep in these communities, this is what you can find. I've been delighted to, as I said, do oral histories for the Yiddish Book Center in the Bobov community, the Mudgets community, the Chabad community, and I mean, it's amazing, you know, what you find. It's, you know, because so many people think of a niggin as a very simple thing, a very, very simple thing. So now I want to go to Mudgets. And I will leave time at the end. I mean, I will leave at least 10 minutes for questions, but I'm going to very quickly cover the next 60 years. And I want to go to Mudgets because, I mean, Mudgets has wonderful dance nigunim. And the Rebbe in Mudgets was seen as, this is Rabbi Taub, was seen as an incredible composer. And composed wonderful, wonderful dance niggin that many people love. This is a good example. This is an example of the Klezmatics playing maybe the most famous Mudgets dance niggin. Here we go. for example. Amazing, right? And I mean, yeah, this was our house niggin from the class that I taught all last week. I would wake up the students before every session. We would sing and dance to that one. But that's Mudgets. Now, the other thing about Mudgets is the great composer of Mudgets then after the Rebbe was Ben-Zion Shenker. And Ben-Zion Shenker only passed away about 5 or 6 years ago, and he was a great inspiration, a wonderful composer, and he really learned at the feet of the Rebbe. And, you know, the way this works is you learn enough nigunim. He would sit in back of the Rebbe at what they call the Malave Malka. After Shabbat, they would have gatherings where, you know, you could answer the phone, but you'd sing nigunim all night. And he would write down the nigunim. And then one day the Rebbe turned around and, because Ben-Zion dropped his pencil, and he said, "Ihr schreibst Musik." And Ben-Zion came to the Rebbe and wrote down then all of his nigunim. And then, as he said to me, he said, and then I found somehow that I could compose. After learning all those nigunim, he could compose in the style of the Rebbe. So in 1946, he wrote this song, which I'll bet many of you know. And this is his setting of Psalm 23. And we're going to hear Rosalie Jarrett. This is by Ben-Zion Shenker. It's about tefillah for the Mudgets. So isn't that amazing? I mean, so this is not a folk song, right? And this is not a piece of, cantorial music. This is Hasidic music. This is a Hasidic music. And so Shanker had a friend in the yeshiva in Flatbush when he went there named Shlomo Carlebach, who was a very brilliant student. And the only problem with Shlomo Carlebach was he refused to sing because he felt like he didn't have a voice. And Ben Zion had a fantastic voice. And so he was very shy. He wouldn't sing. So Ben Zion did what anyone would do with a Hasidic guy who couldn't sing. He brought him to the Rebbe. Usually, if anybody can't do anything, you bring them to the Rebbe. And he brought him to the Rebbe, and he brought him to Malave Malka. And suddenly, Carlebach could sing. And not only could Carlebach sing, but after many weeks of going to the Majitzer Rebbe, he could compose too. So I just want to kind of drop in on Carlebach, and we're not going to go to modern Hasidic music unless you really want me to. I'm going to have questions after this, but I do want to visit Carlebach in his composition of Pischuli Sharei Tzedek, which he wrote supposedly in the taxi on the way to his gig at the Village Gate in 1962. So he became a real popular figure who was popularizing Hasidic music, and he added the guitar to it, and he made it into a contemporary Jewish folk music. So the beautiful thing about this, as you'll hear, is nobody knows the song at the beginning, and by the end, the room is spinning. And so I just want you to hear this.
Pischuli Sharei Tzedek, Ovo Vom Odeko. Please open the gates for me. Please open the gates. Pischuli Sharei Tzedek, Ovo Vom Odeko. Pischuli Sharei Tzedek, Ovoi V'Moy Deko. Oy Pischuli Sharei Tzedek, Ovoi V'Moy Deko. Pischuli Sharei Tzedek, Ovoi V'Moy Deko.
Later, here's what's going pretty amazing for a guy who thought he couldn't sing, right? So he becomes really the one who creates contemporary Hasidic music, or the possibility of contemporary Hasidic music. So that's kind of my thumbnail sketch of the first 250 years. Then there's the last 35 or so, and if there aren't any questions, I'll play you some of that too. One of the things I think I should mention is that one thing that's happened is there has been a claiming of Hasidic music from all over the place. So that, for example, when Adrienne Cooper recorded her album Enchanted, she included Nigun Geulim, but in a very different context. Because, people will take the text of a Hasidic song. There's a song which the Hasidim in Meir Sharim sing, if I had the strength, I would go into the streets and I would sing what? Shabbos, 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 right? And get the cars to stop and basically, obstruct the whole area. She changed it around to be peace, peace, peace. So here, I'm just going to play a little bit of that, and then we'll get to your questions or comments.
הייתי צועקת שלום, 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 שלום.
I just wanted to kind of bring it full circle. So these songs are everybody's songs now, and there's a lot of collaboration between secular Jewish musicians and Hasidim. Quite honestly, as Avram Fried told me, because in his opinion, the Hasidim can't play. So, so he wants people who actually sound like they play the instruments in a Jewish way. So you get a lot of that. And in fact, the band you'll hear tonight is one of those kinds of bands. So I just wanted to say that. And any questions, comments? Yes, sir. Well, see, there's a tradition in the Hasidic community you can't make a recording without a Hasidic choir. So they have incredible arrangements, I think gorgeous arrangements, especially I would say on Ben Zion Shanker's final 2 records. Those choirs are just wonderful. I would suggest that if you want to, that you actually transcribe what those choirs are doing, because they're doing it right. And it's very easy to get it wrong, but there is a way to do it. And we heard a little bit of that with the Fried family harmonizing on Nigun Gulim at the beginning. But there really is a whole style of singing that is the Hasidic choir, and Hasidic choirs are a huge thing in Borough Park at the moment. So thank you for that question. Yes, sir. Yeah. It's a great question. And first of all, people leave Hasidic communities, and they leave the insularity of the Hasidic community, but they take the melodies with them. So, in other words, if you, even on unorthodox, right? If you saw unorthodox, like, what's she doing? She's singing the Bub of her wedding procession for her audition at the conservatory. This insularity is interesting. But on the other hand, Hasidim aren't as insular as you think, I would say. It's just that people don't go into the community that much. I've never had any problem, even in Williamsburg, honestly, learning music from people. And there's, that's the reputation. That's what I have a very funny story about that. This is where, there's not really a lecture after this, so I'd love to tell this story. Schenker told me that, Velvo Pasternak told me this story. It was great. He said Vladimir Heifetz was orchestrating the first record of Mudgets Nigunim, and this is in 1960 or so. And he's a wonderful arranger, but he had no background in Jewish religion, but he knew Jewish music. And he did this whole record. He wrote all the arrangements, and afterwards he said to Velvo Pasternak, who was the producer, he said, "Hey, these melodies are pretty good. Where could I get more of them?" And he said, "Well, let me give you a couple addresses." So he sends them to Lee Avenue. He sends them to Williamsburg, to the Satmar Hasidim, and gives them that address for the shul there. And then he gives them the address of 770 Eastern Parkway. And he says, so look, you go to these 2 places and you'll hear some great music. They're very different from each other. he goes to, on Shabbos, he goes to the Satmar Rebbe and the temple there on Lee Avenue, and he walks in, sits in the back row, takes out his music pad, starts writing down the melodies as he hears them. Now, two big guys come along, one table takes each arm, they pick him up, and they throw him right out onto Lee Avenue. And then, so he reaches into his pocket, and he says, oh, okay, well, he gave me another address too. So he calls a cab, and he takes it to 770 Eastern Parkway, and he goes into the Chabad Center, the center of Chabad, Lubavitch Judaism, and he sits in the back row, takes out his manuscript pad, starts writing down the melodies that he hears. Somebody comes over to him and says, ihr schreibst Musik. Oh, yeah, I write. Oh, interesting, well. Oh, okay, well, when you're finished with it, would you like to come to lunch at my house? And, I mean, that sort of says it all, right? I mean, you don't know what you're going to find, but, that would be what you'd find at Chabad. So, I mean, it's really a great question. I mean, the melodies have gone into common use. Schenker, I'll tell you, I mean, maybe people, if you don't go to the shul, that's one thing. But the recordings are for everyone, and I mean, the recordings have been available since the 1950s. And they were made by people who were not religious. I mean, I also interviewed Helen Stambler, who started Collectors Guild when she was 96 years old. And amazing. I mean, she just heard the music. She said, we got to record this. They got permission from the Rebbe, recorded it. Everybody knows these Mudget's melodies now. So it's very interesting. So they are available. Yes? Yeah. Right. Well, I would say for the first 150 years or so, women sang all they wanted, for one thing. So, I mean, when I interview older Holocaust survivors, they say, the women in our family sang all the time. There never was a problem. It's become much more of a separation, I would say, in the post-war era in New York, that these Kol Isha kinds of things have become more, means the voice of women being provocative. But still, I would Ben-Zion Shenker, that's his favorite recording of Mizmor LaDavid, is Rosalie's version of it. I mean, he loved that. Chassid can listen to a recording of women singing. That's not a problem. The law tends to be about live. So some Hasidim will make an exception for a woman with a microphone. Pretty much all Hasidim will make an exception for a woman on a recording. So it's actually, now women themselves have their own minyanim. They have their own places where they sing with each other. So for example, one of my best friends is a Breslov woman in Boston who has a women's circle, and she's an incredible singer. She's not at the point where she'll let me share with a mixed audience. So women do the same thing that men do. It's actually very interesting that they don't want to share, if they believe in that idea, then they don't necessarily want to share with a male audience. But I was talking to a Satmar Chassid not that long ago who was telling me that she thinks things are changing, even in that community, that women are becoming much more vocal about singing. So actually, it varies. It's not. I mean, it's a lifestyle question. I mean, you can say the same thing about Turkish music or Arabic music in many cases, where in the religious communities women don't sing. But the music is available for everyone. That's all I would say. And women, more and more, are recording Hasidic music. There's a lot of women recording Hasidic music now. Yeah. Mudgetz. Modzhitz, yes. Demblin is the town, just near Warsaw, south of Warsaw. And the Rebbe came over during the Second World War, actually, that they paid a tremendous amount of money to the Nazis. They got him out. He came to New York. with something in his pocket, actually. I mean, I should mention this. The song Ani Ma'amin, which he couldn't read, and Ben Zion Shenker was there to greet him and sang that song. He handed it to him and he sang Ani Ma'amin, which was this sacred song that was sung in the camps. They live in Flatbush. Mudgett's is Coney Island Avenue. Coney Island Avenue. Yeah, you want to go? It's a wonderful shul, Coney Island Avenue. And those, I have to say, the women's galleries at those shuls are loaded. You go up to the second floor. Women go to those shuls and they want to hear the music. They want to hear the music. It's a shame, though, that Shenker isn't with us anymore. But Aaron Orlander is a wonderful singer who does that now. Anything else? Okay, we should really wrap up soon, but yes. Yankee Lemmer, who you're going to hear tonight, is one of them. I would say there's a bunch of really, really good ones, that are recording. And I mean, the two real superstars, Mordechai Ben David, David Vertiger's son, and I mean, I don't know if, Adrian, is it okay if I play a tiny bit of Mordechai Ben David just for a second? Okay, here we go. Okay, great. So Mordechai Ben David is getting older, but I mean, I just think his recordings are so brilliant in the difference between what Hasidim sound like and what normal Americans sound like. It's just, you would not mistake this for anything like a song that would just be that anyone else would sing. So here we go. This is Mordechai Ben David. This is a good example of Mordechai Ben David doing a song which is called Shabbos in Welt. So this is a song by Yontif Ehrlich, who was kind of the Mr. Rogers of I would say, Williamsburg. He was like a guy, a Batin. He was a guy who was at every party, and he only spoke in rhyme, and he wrote 1 million great songs. He made 36 cassettes of his music, which were available as digital downloads, and I have all of them. And Mordechai Ben David has all of them, and he made this recording of Shabbos and Welt. This kind of sounds like modern Hasidic music to me, I would say. Check this out.
Das liebe Jeden, was ich verlangt erzählen, in ihr wird sein zufrieden, sehr stark von dem, der Masse hat getroffen, ich will auch suchen offen, mir sucht das Bam Marisal, mir sucht das Bam Balshem, sich reuen am Libruche, mir weißen le Jaluche, also die Meluche, haben sie beide gekannt, die Steine machen singen, die Wasser machen klingen, die Bäume machen springen, im Patschen mit die Hand, freilich Jeden, mit Daten sind zufrieden, mit Inselbeuren, mit Sandteuren, glücklich sind als in mir geläufen, als der für ihr Neuden, hat gegeben, Koyach auf zu die Tzadikim Lach. Oi, der Tzadik ist am Mul, gegangen Bargen zu, mit Chassiden, mit Talmidem, aber stimmt nicht so. Oi, 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 es gibt Shabbos auf der Welt, oi, in dem Mittenfeld, mit Kabels an dem lieben Shabbos hat sich gestellt. Oi, ich alle, der Shabbos ist für alle, nicht du Kaschil, nicht du keine mit kein Sach, ich nicht du, Kim, Kalle, es warten auf dir alle, die Schäpselich beheimelich, die Shabbos nicht kablu.
Okay, I mean, right? That sounds like modern Hasidic music. All right, thank you so much. I'll be around. You can ask me more questions if you want. And tomorrow morning, I'm doing a lecture on cantora music. It would be just as much fun. What is it, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, something?
Yes, Hankus, your tomorrow morning is at 10 a.m. right in this same spot.
Beautiful. Okay, I'll
so
hang
now-
around if there's more questions. I'll put on my mask. Thank you so much.